Okay, we're going to do something really fun in today's episode. Something that we haven't done this way before. I feel like we've done a few recap episodes where we go over, like, oh, these are the best episodes for this specific topic or for that specific topic. But I'm actually going to do a greatest hits of all time because it feels like the perfect way to close out 2024 and go right into 2025. And it's just a fun topic to listen to for any time of year, but especially if you're listening to this when it goes live and we're in that like weird limbo stage of like, well, technically we're still on holiday break, but I haven't really gone back to work yet. And you're listening to this like maybe you're driving on your car or you're taking a walk because you just needed a break. Like you needed that mental time out to do something for yourself. So this episode is going to be so much fun because we're talking about the top 5 podcast episodes of all time for the Proffitt podcast, as well as my top 5 YouTube videos of all time. And this is going to probably shock you because it's not what you think. All right. It was shocked me. And some of these I looked and I was like, really? Like that's the top, like the most downloaded, the most watched, like, okay. Like, so it's really interesting. And I just love sharing these behind the scenes with you. So let's get right to it. All right, welcome back to another episode. I am Krystal Proffitt, if we have not met, and I am so excited to talk about what we're talking about today because I learned a few years ago, I can't believe it, like it was in 2023. I worked with a coach. So I say a few years ago, last year, right? It feels like forever ago, but also it was so impactful. I learned something about myself, and it was that I don't often take the time to celebrate accomplishments. And so this is me reflecting on the last few years of my own content journey, but also celebrating the fact that we've done some really cool stuff around here and I get to share with you. And so I hope that you take the framework for this episode and replicate it in your own content in whatever way makes sense to you. Maybe you don't do educational stuff, but maybe you share content in a way that you can highlight some of the cool things that you've done across your content. Now, it doesn't have to be your podcast episodes. It could be a big milestone that you achieved in some other form of your journey. But I thought it would be super fun to highlight some of these podcast episodes and YouTube videos that we have readily available. And these are ones that you can go listen to today if you have not listened to them. So this is like, hey, if you're brand new around here, go check these out. Or if you've been around here for a while, but you may have missed some of these, go back and listen to them or watch them because they're really special. All right, so let's just dive right into the top 5 podcast episodes of all time. And I just realized I have these listed in like 1 to 5, but we're actually going to start at number 5 and work our way up. I used to be obsessed with this. It's like totally going to it's a silly thing that I used to do. There was this show called the Kid Craddock Morning Show, and I'm pretty sure it's still around today. I don't know if they call it the same thing. But I remember I was obsessed with listening to like the list that they had to share because they had a really cool voice that would be like, number 5, number 4. You know, it was like the list or like the voice that you would hear for like a movie trailer or something. It was ridiculous. So I'm going to recreate that for you just because I think it sounds funny. So here we go. Number 5. How to be a better teacher in your content. And this is from February 3rd, 2022. Now, this episode was really focused on how to connect with your audience by really effectively teaching through your content instead of just like regurgitating stuff that you learned or just not really sharing things in a way that's going to be impactful. Like we've all been through, like we've sat through a terrible class, a terrible presentation, a workshop, a timeshare pitch, right? Like I could go on and on about so many different ways that people present their content and it's terribly boring. So this was just really all about how to simplify your message and speak directly to your audience's needs in a way that helps you teach better in your content. So if that's one of your goals for 2025, then I highly encourage you go listen to this podcast episode. And again, we aired this in like 2022. So go check it out because it can help you become a better communicator. I love how I'm like missay the word communicator, right? It helps you become a better communicator and deepen those connections with your audience by essentially showing up in a much better way. So that was number 5. Number 4, and this always shocks me because this is it's not only one of my top podcast episodes, it's also one of the top search pages on my entire website. I get hits on this monthly. It's only a few of them, but I still get regular hits on this. And this is from March 2020. It's called, What is Explicit Content for a Podcast? What does it mean? And it's really just demystifying like what that label means, like explicit content and its implications for podcasters. So if you haven't listened to that or you're curious about explicit content in a nutshell, that episode really explains what it is, how the different apps track it. So I go into Spotify actually has this great article that they wrote about what they believe explicit content means. So go check out that episode. We link to all of Spotify's resources, but why should you care? Like, why should you care about explicit content? Well, I want you to understand the platform's guidelines for just avoiding any confusion or penalties for your show. What this can mean is, different sponsorships may not want to advertise with you if you have super explicit content. Or if you just know across the board, you don't want to have any explicit content. I actually run into this a lot on a lot of shows. We have had explicit content on the podcast. We've had people that cuss like sailors. We've had a few people that just drop, an F-bomb here and there. We've had, a few that are just like, there's lots of cussing throughout. I typically don't drop a lot of profanity in my content. So if you're wondering, well, what does that look like? Make sure you go check out that episode because it is super, super helpful. Or if you've just never dabbled in that at all, go check that out. It's going to be linked in the show notes. Number 3. I can't do it and not laugh. It's just too much fun. So number 3 is start a podcast this year in 8 simple steps. And this was aired in January 2022. So it goes through the 8 simple steps of what it takes to start a podcast. It lays out the simple platform, template, workflow, however you want to label it, of how to start a podcast. So if that is something that you're wanting to do in 2025, make sure you go check out this episode. It's as relevant as it was then, as it is today. And it's really going to focus on the essentials of launching and just take out the complexities, right? Like, let's not overcomplicate things. So go check out that episode if you have not launched your podcast, or if you're looking to launch anything, start anything in 25, then go check that out. You're going to start a podcast, a YouTube channel, a newsletter. There's a lot of things that we cover in there that could be super helpful to your journey. And it's pretty straightforward. So it's going to simplify a lot of things. Number 2. Yeah, I'm making myself laugh over here, y'all. It's pretty ridiculous. Intro to the Proffitt podcast. This is my second most downloaded episode of all time. Why is this important? I've said this before, and I'll say it again. When people find your show, they go back to the beginning more often than not, and they will listen to that number 1 episode you ever put out. So I don't typically do this as a consumer, but this is very clear that this is what a lot of people do. Maybe you yourself, you found my show, then you were like, well, what is this show about? What do they talk about? Where do I dive in? Where do I get started? This episode aired in June 2018, whenever it replaced my, actually that would have been, sorry, I take that back. This would have been in 2019, the version that you're hearing today, because this published date, June 20th, 2018, is from whenever I launched my show, like the original show. But what you can do, and you may or may not know this, and this is good for anyone that's rebranding this year, is you can actually go back and replace that audio file, and it's just going to keep the same stats, even if you change the audio file. Like, you don't get 2 separate sets of stats from the original and then the newest one that you uploaded. but it's what people do. So I used to have a show called The Rookie Life. Now it's called the Proffitt Podcast, and I rebranded. And when I did that, it was, hey, this is our show. We rebranded. This is what we're all about. This is what you can expect. So if you haven't gone back and listened to your intro episode, if you currently have a podcast, go check it out and see if it's still relevant. Maybe you're like, oh my gosh, I need to update this. I need to change this. Then by all means, you can absolutely do that. But the key takeaway is it doesn't have to be perfect on day one. And just know that it's going to continue to evolve and grow. And if things change over time and you're like, man, that episode just doesn't make as much sense anymore, go back and listen to it. Go listen to my episode and you can hear how I rebranded. And I said, we were this podcast and we rebranded, and I go into the whole spiel, basically what I just told you. But it's just something that can help you reframe your brand a little bit, and you don't have to do a huge overhaul of everything if you just want to go update your intro episode. So that was number 2. Number 1, right? This is my number 1 most downloaded episode. And I'm going to tell you, I think it's because of my website having linked to this and the fact that this is searchable in so many podcast apps. Okay. So I'm going to give you all my theories, and that's what they are. They're theories. I don't know 100% sure, but this was my episode called The Office Ladies Podcast Case Study, and it's from March 2020. Now, the overview of this is I was obsessed with Office Ladies podcast. I actually stopped listening to it as much, and I got, obsessed with a few other podcasts, but I listened to this show religiously every single week without fail. And I wanted to understand their podcast launch success and I get into all of this. So if you have not listened to this and you want to know how a big name, like these were 2 celebrities that launched a podcast about their show. It was all nostalgic and beautiful. Go check that out, because I go through their stats, how many reviews and ratings they had before they launched. Like I went into when they launched their show, all the metrics that they had that I could see, right? That were available to me to look at as a consumer, not someone that's behind the scenes of their show. And it was really cool. And I think that there are a lot of great lessons learned. So if you have not listened to that and you want to know how a case study works, go check that out. We're actually going to do some more case study episodes in the future. But again, that's been my most successful. So of all the ones that I created, this is just the lesson inside the lesson here. Of all the episodes that I've created, ones that I thought would be a smashing success, like telling you how to make more money, telling you how to do this, helping you with that thing. It's a case study episode that I did on the Office Ladies podcast for March 2020. So you just never know what's going to work. That's the lesson inside the lesson. You never know what's going to work. So follow your passion and create content about what you're interested in and share it with your audience, because that's what I did. And it's panned out really well for me. So those are the top 5 podcast episodes. Now let's go into my top 5 YouTube videos of all time, because again, these are very interesting. Now, I wish I would have had the actual timestamp of how long these are, because I can tell you right now, these are not podcast interviews. So I did this long stint, actually from 2019-ish to 2021, where I was publishing multiple videos a week, like 2 to 3 videos every single week. And that might have meant that they were 5 minutes long, 7 minutes long, some are 12 minutes long, but they weren't all podcast episodes. They were shorter clipped videos. When I say clipped, not all of them were clips of something else, but they were like very short tutorial. You're going to see what I mean. But it's very interesting how the audience reacted to these and how these are still getting hits. Every single one of these are more than 3+ years old. None of them are my newer pieces of content that I've created in the last 4 or 5 years. So it's really interesting. I guess I have created them in 5 years. Sorry, I meant 3 to 4 years. Okay, so let's start at number 5. So number 5 is the Rode PSA-1 boom arm with Blue Yeti mic setup from January 2020. Do you see that a lot of these are happening in 2020? Right? There's a lot. There's a lot going on that year. The overview for this one is setting up a mic, a Blue Yeti mic specifically, and a Rode boom arm for professional audio quality. This is a direct replication of another video that I saw that I watched to set up my own boom arm. And I was like, oh my gosh, like was not helpful. It was too short. It didn't show me the angles that I wanted to see. It didn't show me all the things that were in the video that could have been. And so I just recreated it. So this is permission, right? Another lesson inside the lesson is permission to recreate something, right? You can go and watch something on YouTube and recreate it with your own fancy spin on it or simpler spin on it or something that was just missing from the content and make it happen. So this one is a great one for you. If you have a Blue Yeti and you want to set up a Rode boom arm for your content, then go check that out. It's very specific. I think that's another reason why it performs really, really well. This one has had tens of thousands of views on it. And I think that you should go check it out if you want something. Y'all, it's not great. Like, let's just be clear. The quality of the video isn't great. The editing of the video isn't great, but it solves a very specific problem. And I think that that's why it performs so well. So all of these are going to be linked in the show notes. Go check that one out. Number 4, excuse me, that wasn't good enough. Number 4, solo podcast ideas, how to script or outline episodes. This is from February 2020. So this is a breakdown. I got this question a lot. Krystal, how do you script or outline your episodes? Like, I want to know, like, how do I write down content? Like, how do I get it out of my head onto paper in a format that will work better for my solo episodes? So again, very specific. It's not just any podcast outlines. This is for solo podcast ideas. And it's just breaking down my own structure, like how I did it, how I do it behind the scenes. So the lesson in this is, what do you do behind the scenes that you can share in a YouTube video? That's like, oh, I do this. Like, here's step 1 through 4 or step 1 through 7, whatever it is for you. And just outline it in a way that makes it super simple. And that was something that I think we don't do often enough, is we think, well, no one else is going to get it or no one's going to care about it. You have to make them care. And the way that I did that was I targeted this for solo podcasters, and exactly the problem they were struggling with is how to script or outline an episode. So I think that's why this video particularly performs really well. And I continue to get a lot of views on it. So that was number 4. Number 3, I can't not laugh when I do it. It's so dumb. Create a podcast audiogram using Canva full tutorial. This was a very popular video because it was outlining something that people were asking me all the time on how they could do it. And it's in a tool. So it's specific to a tool. It's in Canva. And I said full tutorial. This is also one where I get a lot of questions. So I get a lot of questions in the comments, which actually helps with engagement, or people are like, yeah, but what about this feature? Or you didn't show this, or I really want to see a video about that. So this one performs well, not only because it helps solve a problem, but also because it gets people engaged in the comments where they want to know more, or they want to know why I didn't go through a specific other thing in the video, or this and that. So it kind of sparks a conversation with people. And I think that those are the best pieces of content to create. So if you are going to do a tutorial, make sure that you list what problem that you're solving, what app that you're solving it in, and make sure you have like full tutorial or quick tutorial or short demo, like whatever applies to the length of your content. So that was number 3. Number 2, again, I can't, I crack myself up. It's really sad. I know. Best podcast intro and outro examples. Use these for interviews. Now, this one's from June 2020. And again, this is what people are asking me about. They are coming to my channel and saying, okay, let me take that back. They're not coming directly to my channel. They are typing into Google. They're typing into YouTube. Like, I need to do an intro for my podcast, or I need to do an outro for my podcast. I need some examples. And I know that people need examples because I needed examples when I was creating the intro. Now, what do I mean by the intro? It's what you hear the first, 2 minutes of this show, where I'm leading into like, oh, this is what we're going to talk about today. This is what we're going to do. I'm offering my hook. I'm telling you what to expect, like why you should care. And then we go into the main theme. Then we go into the whole spiel, main segment of the episode. And then we have the outro at the end. These are things that I didn't know what to do, but this particular video is for interviews. So how to read someone's bio and make it not sound boring, how to make sure that the end is something that's making your audience take action on the CTA that you or your guest had for that particular episode. So it's a great one. If you do interviews, make sure you go check it out. Because I think that it's going to be something that can really help you up your game in 2025 if you're looking to have better intros and outros for your interviews. And the last one, number one, solo podcast, the number one tip to know. This one continues to shock me and surprise me. I don't know what the exact numbers are. I know that it's had close to 100,000 views on this one particular video. I know last time I checked, it was like 60 and 70,000. I mean, it could be more than that at this point, but this one still shocks me because it's 5 minutes. This is a 5 minute. I know this one because it's continued to be like this thing, like, really? That same video is getting that many views? Like, this many people have watched it? Like, okay, I guess because it's short. I guess because it's very targeted to solo podcasters. Again, I'm calling out my audience very clearly. So solo podcast, the number one tip to know. And maybe they're seeing that and they're like, I'm a solo podcaster. What is the one thing I need to know? And because it's short, people typically are watching more than 50% of the video, which, I mean, if you've seen any YouTube statistics, like that's shocking, right? You can see like the view duration, and anything over a few seconds is like, yes, like I've achieved it. Like I have arrived. I've done amazing things. But the key takeaway is just learning more about being a solo podcaster. So I'm not going to spoil it. Like no spoiler alerts here. Go watch that video. Again, it's 5 minutes. Watch it 2x speeds. It's 2.5 minutes. But it's something that helps you build confidence as a solo host, and some of the things that really helped me whenever I decided in the very beginning of my podcasting journey in 2018 that I was going to go solo for a lot of my content and I didn't need a co-host. So if you're kind of grappling with that, or you're a solo podcaster, or you want to get into solo podcasting, make sure you listen to that. But that's it. Like those are our greatest hits of all time. Again, I was very shocked, very shocked that some of these made it to the very top of our most downloaded, most watched pieces of content. But some of the key lessons that I wanted to share from this is reflecting on this and looking at the top performers. I can see that actionable advice resonates the most with my audience. I could see that very clearly. I could see that examples and templates work really well, or tutorials, like whatever word you want to use for that. But showing people exactly step by step how to do things is very helpful in the content that I'm creating. Also, that clarity and simplicity keeps the audience engaged. So keeping it very simple, calling out it's a tutorial for this specific person on this specific platform, and it's quick or it's short or it's full tutorial, whatever, but keeping it very action-centered is very important. And the other one is tutorials and case studies. Like they're crowd pleasers. They make people happy. And it's something that I'm going to continue to do. It's why I share so many questions from the community around here, because if one person has this question, it's likely that 50 other people have this question. So it's why you'll continue to see this type of content created around here. But really go back and listen to these, like watch these. If you're like looking for things to like rejuvenate your journey and you're like, oh, I want to see what kind of content she was creating 4 years ago, 5 years ago at this point, like go check it out, because you're going to see that things look a lot different. Okay. Like I produce way fancier content today in my delivery, my editing, like everything that we're doing here is so much more crisp than it was then. Yet that content still outperforms a lot of our current things that we're doing, just because it's been around the block or two. Like it's been there and it's had people comment, it's had people watch it. People are still consuming it. I'm still making money from these. That's another key thing from YouTube. I'm still making money on all of these videos. So it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. This is my little plug, like get into YouTube this year if you have not already thought about it. And I want to see you in Podcasters Connect. So if you've been thinking about starting a YouTube channel and you don't really know what that's going to look like, join us in Podcasters Connect. You can go to krystalproffitt.com/join. We're going to be doing some really cool things, and YouTube is going to be one of the big topics that we have. I can't think off the top of my head which month we're going to cover that in detail, but you don't want to miss it. You don't want to miss it. So come join us, hang out with us in our brand new community, Podcasters Connect, because we're going to have so much fun. But thank you so much for your support. Like, I want to just say, like, as we close out 2024, when this episode drops, I'm excited for 2025. I'm looking forward to what we can do together in the next year. And I just so appreciate every single one of you watching, listening, commenting, being a part of this community and hanging out with us, because without you, this journey just wouldn't be as special. And I'm so grateful for every single one of you. But make sure, if this is your first time tuning in, that you follow and subscribe so you don't miss any of our future episodes and updates. And as always, remember, keep it up. We all have to start somewhere.